guys, it's Kristen and Jessica again. Last night we had someone, Krista, I do believe, that was on our other live that requested we do a fabric tumbler on a cup, because when we were doing our kind of the dirty pour kind of method, we went ahead and that was in the comments that she would like to see. We went ahead and got a couple things prepped so then you guys don't have to wait on the drying process. We also did it ourselves because we've never done the fabric wrap before. So we went ahead and picked up 3 cups today so we could go ahead and test it out just to make sure that we kind of knew what we were doing, some helpful tips and tricks for you guys to be able to kind of make the tutorial a little bit better instead of us just winging it and not knowing what works better, what works worse. We did go ahead and watch a video last night. We watched Amber Johnson, her YouTube video. She just went ahead with a step-by-step on how to do a fabric tumbler, so that's pretty much where we learned everything. And then we did a tester cup, which we'll show you guys later. It's on the spinner. But we did a tester cup just to make sure that this method is going to work, and then we did change it around just a little bit apart from her video, but for the most part it was pretty similar. So we did want to give her credit because she is the one that taught us how to do this, kind of gave us a few helpful tips and tricks. So we're going to kind of go through kind of the supplies that you're going to need. We just have a 20-ounce built tumbler. Unlike the 30 ounces and stuff like that, it'd probably be quite difficult with that little lip. So I kind of recommend doing the 20 ounces so then each side is all flat. Our one that we did back there that's spinning, we did sand, but the one that we have over here drying, we did not. So I don't think we're going to sand this one. You can, if you want to, go ahead and sand it and prep it like any other tumbler and do a base coat if you don't like the stainless steel. But honestly, the one that we just did, both of them, actually, we don't even see the stainless steel underneath it. So I don't think it's necessary. I did hear though from that Amber Johnson's video that if you do a white or light looking fabric, you're gonna want to spray paint the cup first, like a white or like a cream color, or else you're gonna see the stainless steel through that. So just keep in mind, if you're doing a darker fabric, you necessarily don't have to cover it unless, like she said, you don't want to see the stainless steel. But if you do a white fabric, keep in mind to paint your cup first. Which you can also paint your cup a color that will match your fabric too, and not just do whites and stuff like that. You're going to need a really good pair of scissors. These are fabric scissors because you're going to have to cut that fabric. Any kind of tape, like washi tape or electrical tape, just something so when you get to the seam part, you can go ahead and lay that down and have a straight line. You're going to want an X-Acto knife with a really sharp blade on it. Otherwise, your fabric is going to fray at the ends if it's not sharp enough. The fabric of your choice. So we're going to go ahead and show you guys this Nightmare Before Christmas fabric. We did get our fabric from Walmart. They do have quite a few of the pre-packaged little squares like this. Ranging from anywhere from 97 cents to I think $5. You can get a pack of them. I believe this one cost us $1.97, and we are going to get a full 20-ounce cup plus have a couple of swatches left where you could do some smaller cups, like maybe a 16-ounce, a 10-ounce, something like that. We do have E6000 spray. We do put it in this bottle because the bottle that it comes in is garbage. This is normally what it looks like when you buy it from the store, but after you use it once or twice, the nozzle up here does get pretty gooped up, so you're not necessarily able to use it after that. So we just used a separate spray bottle. And then instead of us spraying it on and kind of making a mess all over, we are going to pour it onto this plate and use a foam brush to go ahead and brush our E6000 on. So that's really all that you need for this tutorial. You don't really need to measure anything, so you don't need a tape measure or anything like that. But like she said, we do have one spinning that we did earlier. We're going to go ahead and show you that after we show you guys this tutorial, so you can kind of see what it looks like with the bright tone and crystal-lac on it. And like we said, so you don't have to wait on the drying process, we will show another cup that is at the next stage, so then we can just go ahead and keep going and going. But we will show you the finished product of this cup that we're going to show you now. So I'm going to go ahead and tilt you guys down to the table so you can kind of see more what we're doing. We try to set it up so you can see our faces and the table, and it's just not working. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Go ahead and comment below if you guys have any questions. We will go ahead and answer them at the end of the video. Or if you guys have any other tutorials that you guys would like to see, we are definitely open to it. Like I said, she told us about this one last night and we are on it today to go ahead and get these out for you guys. They will also be posted to our YouTube page that we're gonna go ahead and get set up today and ready to go. So these tutorials and stuff we're gonna go ahead and do more of and will be on YouTube. So let's get started. So we're gonna start by taking our fabric here and kind of just laying it out. We do put the pattern facing this way. It seems to work a lot better for us.
And as you guys can see, this is a pretty large piece of fabric for $1.97. So just keep that in mind if you guys want cheap fabric. Walmart's the place to go.
And they have multiple designs. We have like 4 or 5 others in the cupboard, like Minnie Mouse, stuff like that, that we're gonna go ahead and do. So then you're just gonna take your cup, lay it on your fabric, and you're gonna leave about 1 inch to 1.5 inch gap between your fabric and your cup. We kind of do a little bit more than that because we tend to mess up things. So we're just giving us a little bit extra space here. So we're gonna line that up. You don't really need a specific amount on this side because you're just gonna go ahead and roll this over anyways. So I kind of just leave a decent gap, kind of like wrapping a present. And then I pull it tight and go, make sure all of this is flat, and then I just roll it. And then once you get to that line that you first started with, I roll it 2 times over to give extra fabric. So I go 1, 2 extra, and then we will go ahead and cut that line. Because don't be afraid to have a little bit extra, because when we get to the seam part, which we're going to show you, most of that extra will come off.
And you're going to want to be forgiving just in case you guys make a mistake or your seam doesn't quite line up. You don't want any of your cup underneath showing, so always give yourself a little bit extra fabric to work with. So this here is a piece of fabric that we actually have left over. I just wanted to show you guys that it actually is a pretty large chunk.
Which we could probably either do a 16-ouncer with that, or a sippy cup, or even use it, because some people will take fabric and cut little lines and turn it into a wreath. So either way, it's not going to go to waste. So then we turn it to this side. We'll also be cutting 1 inch to 1.5 inch gap for the bottom. If you are gonna wrap the bottom of your cup with the fabric, which we're not going to do, you do want to give yourself extra so you can fold that in at the bottom, but we're not gonna do that. So we're just gonna do this little piece, because if you wanted to, you could take all of this and cover your bottom, fold it up in like a little present and cover your bottom, but we don't want to do that. So we're just gonna do it this way. So then now is the part where you're going to take your cup and we're going to put E6000 all over it. A very helpful tip for the E6000, it dries very quickly. Some people have used Mod Podge for this. We really don't like Mod Podge, and it would take a lot longer for it to dry. So we just stick to the E6000 spray. It's a little bit more than Mod Podge, about $10 for that bottle we showed you, but it does work a lot better.
And then I also heard that it is better if you do a pretty thick coat here to go ahead and let your fabric really adhere to your cup. So I do give it a pretty good coating. So don't be too shy with your glue in this step here.
Because you want to see like where it's pulling, the glue is coming off. You want to make sure that you go back over those spots and make sure that they're completely covered.
Especially around the rim, and then if you guys have a label on your cup like this built does, I like to get in there pretty thick just to make sure all the letters are completely covered.
So then she's got that. I'm better at placing the fabric, we found out. So I take the built part and I just place it on my cup. Remember, leaving your 1 inch to 1.5 inch gap at the top. And then I roll this part over and kind of smooth it out. Trying to make that line as straight as I can, because that's going to be the start of our seam. So then I just take this and I pull tightly and roll as straight as I can. Stopping and kind of like smoothing out your fabric so you don't have any bubbles, and then rolling again and smoothing.
You're going to feel some glue come through the fabric. That is completely fine, as we're going to cover this in glue anyways. So just keep in mind, don't be too worried if you guys have some seeping through the fabric.
And then roll and wipe. And then I just take this and pull. Don't worry that this isn't tacked down, because most of this is going to be cut off. So, and don't worry if this line isn't straight as well, like from your scissor cutting, because that's going to come off. So if you see, we do have some of our E6000 that is seeping through. And I do have a wrinkle, so I'm going to pull tight down here and push down. And then kind of just roll over it again, just to get any kind of bumps and make it as straight as you can. Because if you see, I did pretty well, not that much off, and it does line up right here on our seam, but remember, most of this is getting cut off anyways. So then with that seam, when you're all ready, you got it where you want it to be. And also with the Walmart fabric, it is quite giving, where I can stretch it and pull it and it will do what I want it to do. So that's a plus to this fabric. Now, at this part, we will take our seam here and fold back until you get to your stainless steel. So just pull this back, because remember, none of this has Mod Podge on it yet, or the E6000. So I'm just pulling right back until you see a small little gap of the stainless steel. And then we're going to go in there with more Mod Podge, not Mod Podge, E6000, sorry.
I do a pretty thick coat in this gap here on the stainless steel, and then I go over about 1 inch onto the fabric just to make sure that we're going to get a pretty good seal, and this will come in helpful later when we have to cut our seam. And then I also like to apply it a little bit thick near the bottom too, and we'll explain why later.
So then now I just take this again and I will roll it back over just to cover that seam, and pull it and straighten it. So I think that looks good to me. So I will pull that and push. And there, if you guys can see that, the E6000 is coming through once again, which is not an issue at all, because we will be coating it all in E6000. So I just rub this really, really well, because this is our seam. This is an important part of the cup. This is probably the most difficult, but it's not that hard. This whole fabric thing is very easy. We've done, this will be the 3rd wrap, and we've probably only been working for about an hour to an hour and a half. So rub that really well. And then if you guys can see, I don't know if you guys can or not, but you can kind of see the seam where the fabric was underneath. So we're gonna go ahead and take this line and add.
We're gonna pull this up and trim it off a little. That way we don't have such a large piece of fabric. So we're gonna go ahead and just trim a little bit off here, just to make this gluing down process a little bit easier.
But you want to look to see where your seam was to go ahead and try to take as much fabric off as you can. So we're only leaving very little of this, and just smooth it back down. It should go right back to where it was.
And then we're going to go ahead and take our E6000 once again, and we're going to go right over the fabric, paying close attention to where your seam underneath is, because you're going to want your fabric here to get kind of crunchy once it's done drying, and that's going to help you guys cut the seam. So I go right over the seam, about 1 inch, 1.5 inches on either side, and again I do it kind of thick. And then again, this is also a good point to bring your glue up towards your excess fabric hanging over the top and the bottom. Okay, so that's got a pretty good coat on it, and then you're going to go ahead and let it dry. Could take about 20 minutes. Sometimes we blast it with the hairdryer, but we have another cup sitting over here to show you guys, so we don't have to wait that long.
The next cup we're going to show you is up to this step. Like we said, this is going to dry for about 20 minutes to a half an hour, or you could blast it with your hairdryer if you're impatient. So we're just going to grab a cup that we went all the way up to this step and continue on that cup. so you guys don't have to wait for this to dry. But we will show you the finished product of this cup.
So this is our next cup that we went ahead and prepped already. We did go ahead and glue down the seam. Everything we did the exact same up until this point. So we're going to go ahead and show you guys how to trim your seam, which I think is the most difficult part of the process, although it doesn't take a whole lot to learn. So we're going to go ahead and show you guys that.
So then up to this point, this cup you can also see right where our seam is underneath the fabric.
So we go ahead and we find our seam, where is it, right here. And then we give ourselves about a 1/2 inch to work with our tape. So we're gonna take any kind of tape, washi tape, electrical tape, anything that you can find. And we're gonna just place that about a 1/2 inch from the seam that's lying under our existing fabric. And then just go until you think it looks straight. And then I always have her proof it just to make sure it looks straight to her too.
So to me that is straight, and I will push this all down because you're going to use this tape as your line to get a straight line for your seam.
Okay, so we're going to take our X-Acto knife, again with a super sharp blade, and then we're just going to go ahead and cut along this seam that we made with our tape, the one that's closest to our underlying seam.
So we're going to cut this line. So remember, all this fabric that we glued and wasn't perfect, all that's getting cut off.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead. Patience is key here. You want to get as straight as possible, especially with your blade, so just go slow and be careful. And when you start pressing, you want to press until you feel the stainless steel underneath. When you start cutting, you can tell that you're cutting the cup, which is about how deep you want to go.
Pulling your fabric tight at this point is a great idea because it'll give you a more crisp line and it won't bulge up as much. Another reason why we try to put the bilt in the back of our cup is because then when at this stage you're not trying to cut over that big embossed decal on the front of the cup.
We just go over it a second time with our X-Acto just to make sure that we're cutting any pieces of fabric that may have not got cut the first time.
So at least 2 passes at this point is a great idea because it helps a lot.
We pull up our fabric up here and we just go ahead and follow our line over the edge of the cup, and then we want to cut all the way through. That's going to help us pull off our existing fabric. So let's just make sure we have a good clean cut up here. And then we're going to do the same thing down here at the bottom. And then don't worry about cutting your bottom piece here very straight. It's not really necessary because it's going to come off.
The only way that would be necessary is if you guys were going to keep your fabric and, like we said, fold it in at the bottom, but we're not going to do all that.
Okay, so first thing first, we're going to remove the tape. And then here we have the line that we cut and the line of the existing fabric that we have not yet trimmed off. We're just going to go ahead and pull that piece of fabric off. Now you might have some pieces of fabric that didn't quite cut through all the way, and just go ahead and hit that with your X-Acto while you're pulling the fabric off. Okay. So then at this point we have a lot of fraying to Don't worry about that. As long as you're going to get it covered, it's totally fine.
So then, like we said, the fabric is very pliable and you can kind of move it and kind of like squish it together to get your seam. And then any of these sprays, just go ahead and cut those off because you don't need them. So now she's just kind of working with the seam.
And then I just like to go ahead and dab a little bit of glue over it. Hi Sherry, thanks for watching. Now you just really got to play with it because like she said, this fabric is really stretchy. So it's just kind of getting it to where you want your edges to meet up. Pour more glue on there. And then I just like to go ahead and tape the seam as we move along. That way we don't have any of the fabric that's pulling up. And again, don't be shy to be kind of thick with your glue. Sometimes it does take quite a bit of playing around just to go ahead and get your seam where you want it. Sometimes I like to get the ends pulled together and then we can work through the middle here. Our first cup went a lot more smoother than this one, so this one's going to take a little bit more playing around, like we said.
And then we can always jump back to this other cup because by the time we're done with our seam on this one, we can go ahead and go back to the Nightmare Before Christmas cup.
And also keep in mind that if you guys are making a cup and you've never done this before, some of the seams might not completely touch together. Our first one came out really well. This one's kind of got a small gap going on, which we might be able to work with. But if not, keep in mind that if you guys are going to personalize it, you can always add a decal over this, or you can always add glitter, things like that. Keep in mind, just in case, because sometimes, you know, these seams are a little bit hard to cover. If you guys are having trouble, always keep in mind that you guys can try and cover it. Yes, Sherry, this is a cup. It's a 20-ounce tumbler, a metal tumbler that we're going ahead and putting some fabric over.
So then kind of like how your seam is going, like how much E6000 we went ahead and put on this, we're probably going to end up setting this aside and letting it dry again for 20 to 30 minutes and then go back to your seam. But like we said, we do have this one almost ready to go. We may sit here and blast it with a hairdryer really quick and then go back to this one. So you guys can kind of see, since we did start with this cup, we kind of just wanted to show you that seam part. Which we're gonna
so
go
like
ahead and
she
do
said,
again.
it is kind of wet and pliable at the moment, so it's really slippery. So if you guys just set it aside, let it dry for a few minutes, it's a lot easier to pull your seam together. But for the most part, I've got it pretty close. So I'm just going to set it aside, let it dry a little so it's not so sticky and slippery, and then we'll come back to it later.
So it may get loud for a second, but I do want to blast this just for a minute or so because it is a little tacky, but not too bad. Pretty good. If you guys did not see the beginning of this video, we are back to our Nightmare Before Christmas that we started with, up to the point where we glued our seam together. So then, remember, we pull this back because we don't want all of this fabric. Oh, we already did that. Haha. So then we are just going to find our seam on this cup. If you guys can see it, it's right here, all the way down. And we're going to tape it just like we just did that cat one. So we're going to tape this again.
Okay. I'm going to cut on this side. Okay.
Your tape might not stick perfectly because there is the E6000. That's kind of like why we like using the not so tacky tape, because then it will either pull up your fabric, cause more of the fraying, anything like that. So then I'm just going to check this line to make sure we're straight. I'd say that's pretty good. And then our seam's right there. And then we're just going to cut.
Oops. Move it over a little, actually. Okay. So again, with your really sharp X-Acto knife, we're going to go ahead and just trim off the excess fabric.
Just like we did with the other one. This is the most tedious part, is doing your seam. It's kind of one of those things where you get really nervous or you're just sitting there holding your breath. That would be this moment.
Again, make sure you're cutting deep enough so you're cutting through all the fabric that's underneath. So your first and second layer of fabric. And then we always go over it a second time just to make sure we don't have any pieces of fabric that did not get cut the first time around.
And then both of the cups that we've been doing today, such as this Nightmare Before Christmas, we have the baseball one we haven't showed you guys yet that is spinning with the bright tone on it. That we'll show you in a little bit. Was our first cup that we did. They will be up for sale within the next couple days. Or if you see one that we're doing right now that you want to call dibs on, go ahead and comment below and we will contact you. But any kind of cups that we do in our tutorials will normally be up for sale.
And then keep in mind you want to cut all the way through your fabric. That way when you pull your seam off, it's going to pull all the way off. And it doesn't need to look perfect up there because it's going to come off anyway, so keep that in mind also. Okay. Okay. So So then let's go ahead and take the tape off first, and then again keep in mind to keep your X-Acto handy just in case you need to help it along at all, in case any parts got missed, like up here.
On there, and then we're stuck again here, and then here. The hardest part is down by the bottom where it bevels to get your fabric cut. So that's kind of like why we don't really do the wrapping of the bottom.
Okay, so then comes the important part about getting your piece of fabric out from the bottom where you can see your seam that we showed you guys before. So we go ahead and just pick up our piece of fabric. And as you can see, the line that we cut all the way through. Again, you might have to help it along a little bit, but then you're going to pull this piece all the way out. And the main parts that get stuck are the little frays of fabric, which we can always trim off later. But they give us the most trouble here. It's a lot better with 4 hands than it is with 2. And again, we're at the bottom where it gives us the most trouble. There we are.
And then that's that extra piece. So that comes out too.
Can go through here and kind of trim off some of these frays. That way if you guys don't want them to show through the bottom, they might. So I just kind of go ahead and trim these up a little here. Just like that. Then you go ahead and you pull your piece of fabric back over. Make sure that your seams are lining up. And again, you might have to stretch it a little bit. These fabrics sometimes need to be played with.
And I also stretch them so then they kind of match up a little bit better.
And if you guys need to, some of the E6000 underneath has already sort of started drying. So we can always go ahead and apply more glue under that just to make sure that it's going to completely stick down. We're going to go ahead and get some glue right in the seam just to make sure it kind of sticks down.
So kind of just gluing and pulling and taking the excess E6000 that comes from underneath and just rubbing the entire seam.
And again, stretch your fabric if you need to. If your guys' seam doesn't work out the first time, again, keep in mind you can cover it with a decal, glitter, things like that. But so far we've been pretty lucky with our seams.
And then I'm going to cut off the extra frays, which again, you can do either at this point or after, but I like to do it now just to get a nice clean seam. Just cut all these off that you see. You don't have to, but I like to. And don't worry if you see it's not sticking. It will, because we will be covering this whole thing in E6000, and it will stick a lot better because right now it's still wet. So then there is the seam. So this will all get covered and will stick, and don't forget you are going to cover it in a layer of your bright tone or Crystalac or epoxy, whatever you guys use. We use the bright tone Crystalac. It's a lot better than epoxy. So I'm going to get all my little excess that I cut off so we don't get it mixed in there. So then your seam is done and ready to go.
So then we just go ahead and I do one coat of the E6000 first, especially paying attention to this seam just to make sure it's actually going to stick down. And again, you can bring it over the edge because we are going to cut the tops and bottoms off, so keep that in mind. And then we go ahead and cover the entire cup. Again, it can be a pretty thick layer. This E6000 does dry clear. So it might look cloudy at first, don't worry, it'll be clear afterwards.
You can use Mod Podge or E6000. We have not tried the Mod Podge method. We've only done the E6000. I like E6000 because it dries a lot faster and you can just keep moving. Kind of like how we started this at the very beginning and it was almost dry. So we could go ahead and hop right back to it. We will probably blow dry this one again for another minute or two so we can go ahead and keep working so you guys can see the full process on the same cup.
So I'll just go ahead and hit it with the blow dryer real quick, and then we'll show you guys how to trim the top and bottom, and then we'll go ahead and show you our other cup that's on the spinner. That way you guys can see what it's going to look like with the layer of Crystalac over the top. So already it's pretty just tacky. And then I like to just go ahead and make sure that our seam is reinforced, make sure we're not going to have any pulling up, things like that. Looking pretty good. And then this is the part where we're going to trim the top and bottom. Again, if you guys are going to cover your tops and bottoms, you're going to want to use the excess fabric, but we're just going to cut it off.
So then now I will start, I go in from where your seam is and kind of just place the scissors on the top of the cup and work my way around. And yes, it's not perfect, but we will go back and I'll show you the other angle. So we'll start there. And then it's not perfect, as you can tell. So then I'm gonna go from the outside, because I started on the inside. I'm gonna go on the outside and go at an angle and trim up. And get that seam. Little excess pieces. I'm kind of particular when it comes to this part because I don't want any of the fabric on the inside to potentially get wet, ruined, anything like that. So just at an angle and cut all the way around.
This is also why it's good to have some sharp fabric scissors. That way you can get a nice crisp line, so keep in mind that's going to make your life a whole lot easier if you have some nice scissors lying around.
You can use your X-Acto knife if you want, but I would just rather use scissors. It seems like I can get a better line than with an X-Acto knife. So still going at an angle and still using the top of that cup as my guide. You can play with this as much as you want. I've seen some people don't go directly to the rim of their cup. They kind of leave a stainless steel rim, which you can do at the top and the bottom if you want. But we're just going to cover the whole cup. So then that would be the top. So it's nice and smooth and cut. Like I said, I could do this all day to make sure it's perfect, but that's how you cut that. And then you do the same thing to the bottom. I'll go in where the seam started from the inside, place my scissors on the top for a guide, and go all the way around. And then the same thing. Now I'll go on the outside at an angle and trim. Just trim all the way around. So pretty much if you see I'm just getting little itty bitty pieces off, that's what you want, unless you want to go up further in the cup and take and just leave a stainless steel rim. But that's not what we want. So I'm just taking a very little off the bottom.
And then during this process, as it is normal for your fabric to kind of pull up in some spots, as the E6000 is still only one coat on the top. We are going to coat it again, so don't worry about it. If you need to, you can go ahead and lay down your fabric again, kind of mash it down to make sure it's going to stick. And then we are going to put another coat to another 2 coats, depending how our fabric is holding, to the cut before we apply our crystal lac. So just keep that in mind. We are going to put more E6000 on.
Because you're cutting and you're kind of pulling the fabric at the same time, because I pull this little piece up that I don't like, and then I trim it, and then it gets right there on the edge of the cut. So I do have to go back and push everything back down. That's just how I found to get a cleaner cut and a cleaner edge. So like she said, I'm gonna go back, take all of those off, and fix my fabric.
So our next step after that would be to, of course, cover the whole cup again in E6000 and let it completely dry. Make sure you go in kind of thick around your seam and around the top and bottom edges, just to make sure that none of your fabric's going to start to peel up. And then you guys want to let that completely dry. I would say give it about an hour, just to make sure all of your underlying layers are completely dry, because you don't want any moisture underneath your crystal lac, or it's going to get cloudy and not stick to your cup. So keep that in mind. Don't be in a rush for that part. Let it completely sit and dry before you move on to your next step.
So I'm just making sure everything's in place where I want it, and getting any of my extra little frays off, because then that will stick in the E6000.
And then you guys can see that our stainless steel cup here at the bottom, we did not cover it with anything, but we think it looks just fine. And you are going to cover the bottom of your cup with your crystal lac also. So just keep that in mind as well.
So I think that's pretty good. And then of course there's your seam. We got a really good seam on this one, and it's quite straight, and it goes all the way around. And it's just using plain old fabric. So then, like she said, we're gonna go ahead and coat it again.
And for the sake of time, since you guys have seen us coat it, like I said, just coat it 1 to 2 more times depending if your fabric is sticking or not. Let it completely dry, maybe about an hour, and then move ahead to the Crystal-Lac section. I've heard some people say it takes 8 to 10 coats of the Crystal-Lac, but 1 to 2 coats of your epoxy, depending what method you guys are going to use. And then we're going to go ahead and take you over to the turner right now and show you our first cup, the baseball cup, and what it's going to look like with some Crystal-Lac on it.
So over to the turner here. So this is the first one that we did. It is fabric, and it does have the first layer of Crystal-Lac on it. We do put a little marking on the bottom of our cups, but this is all fabric, and it does have 1 layer on it.
And then we'll wait for the seam to come around just so you guys can go ahead and see the kind of seam that we got on the cup. Again, if you guys don't like seams, keep in mind you can cover it.
So then that's the seam of the cup. Not very noticeable at all. If you don't like it, cover it with a decal or something, but for our first fabric one, I'm kind of actually really liking this cup a lot better than I thought I would. And it is just a normal stainless steel 20 ouncer. We didn't prep it, we didn't spray paint it or nothing, and you can't see any of the stainless steel other than on the bottom. So these are the fabric cups that we're working on. We will go ahead and show you guys the Nightmare Before Christmas when that one is completely finished.
We have our cat one over here still, which is still actually pretty wet on the seam. So we're going to go ahead and let that dry a couple more minutes, and then just keep an eye out on our page to see the final product of that one. For some reason it's taken quite a bit to dry. But other than that, those are our fabric cups. If you guys see any other ideas that you guys want to see, any more fabric ideas, or just ideas in general, if you see a tumbler on our page and you want to see how we do it, let us know. We can make another video. And then keep in mind to head over to our YouTube page. We will post a link later on where we're going to go ahead and post tutorials, vlogs, and things like that. If you guys didn't know, we are getting ready for that craft show, and it is in 25 days from now. So we are going to be getting ready for that, so we should have some vlogs and things like that up, kind of describing what we're working on at the moment.
Just wanted to show you how the little fabrics that we get are packaged at Walmart, and show you some more that we're going to have coming. If you guys want to see the tutorials on these ones, go ahead and comment below which ones you guys want to see. This one is a Minnie Mouse one. It's really cute. It is called a fat quarter at Walmart. So
keep in mind you guys can get your fabric from the big rolls where you can get a yard or two, just depending, but we found these to be pretty cheap and a good substitute, so we don't have to wait in line for them to cut the fabric and everything like that.
And then this is another one that we're going to go ahead and do. Star Wars. And that's it. So these 3 we're going to go ahead and do. If you guys want to see tutorials on these, let us know. We can go ahead and do those for you. It is very easy, so don't be afraid to go ahead and try it. You have a bunch of different options when it comes to all the fabrics that you can use. So it's really something to really look into. I'm happy that we went ahead and did it. And like I said, this Nightmare Before Christmas will be going on the spinner next, and will be up for sale. So thank you guys for watching our tutorial, and we will go ahead and continue to work on that cup and get it posted as soon as we can. And thank you to everyone who has watched and
for your suggestion to try the fabric cup. It's a lot of fun, and I'm definitely glad we learned how to do it. I can see a lot of different cups coming that way.
Yep, so any kind of tutorials, like we said, we got this request last night. We went ahead and did it today, so if you guys have any more, we'll go ahead and get it done within the next couple days. So I'm gonna get up again and turn this off. So thank you guys for watching, and more tutorials will be coming your way.